So we are here now at the end of the Authortube newbie tag. I'm going to do all the questions. Hello, Sujemm readers of the future. Hi guys, my name is Melanie Clark. I'm the author of the Christian fantasy series, The Sujemm. If you didn't know, the world building holds messages about Jesus, but you wouldn't know if I didn't tell you. So I am now on question number 1. We're doing this. And also, number 8, when did you start writing? And number 9, what was the first story you ever wrote? All of that it's pretty personal. Okay, let's get started. Everything is linked below, the original tag, all those things are linked below. We can do this. Fighting. I love Korean drama, so fighting. Any K-drama people, they know what that is. Fighting. Okay. How did you find out about Authortube? Question number 1. I was on my mother's couch recuperating from chemotherapy. And I remember so vividly laying on her couch and just on my phone watching so many Authortubers like Jenna and Kim Chance. They really were, I think it was around, when was it? It was 2015 when it all just, whoa, happened. But in August 2015, I did start getting chemotherapy. I had surgery. I'm walking on water with him. Thank you, Holy Spirit. In August 2015, I went in, I thought I had a cyst on my ovary, and they checked it out, and it was stage 3 ovarian cancer. I had to have surgery. If I'm not mistaken, it was like a 9-hour surgery. First time I ever had surgery too. Then I had chemo. And praise the Lord, I'm completely healed. Praise the Lord, I'm healed. Praise the Lord, I'm here. And I remember feeling like my dream had died in writing the Sujemm. It was actually in my editor's hands. I had already signed the contract. I signed the contract in May of 2015 with the self-publishing company that I'm working with. I'll link them below. I've mentioned them in several videos. I'll link them below again. They're just amazing, and I'm very grateful to them, because during that time in July, I was getting tested, and Stephanie was reading through the manuscript at that time. And then in August is when everything happened, finding out. And so after the surgery, I had to also cope with coming to terms that I would never have children. In many ways, the Sujemm and the book has been like my child then, because I had to get some healing from that, and God, that was really, God blessed me with some beautiful women in my life. Ellie, Shine, and Shandy, they helped me so much. I went from feeling inadequate as a woman because I couldn't have children, to the next year holding newborn babies from my friends in my arms, and not feeling an emotional pain. So God really healed me. And I volunteer at the children's church. And I just wanted to show you, like, this is the stuff that I get sometimes. Like, you know, like this right here. I got lucky and got cards from some of the kids. They were the kindness cards that we were working on. And they these two little girls, they gave me their cards. Oh, that warmed my heart. Like, that was so sweet. I would say that the children's church is really filling my, that loss that I felt. I'm finding in children's church such a blessing. There's such a blessing in volunteering at children's church. And then this little boy, he was like hugging me, telling me that he has a report on horses. That just blessed me too. So that really helps out a lot too. So children's church really does good. Children are such a blessing. They're such a blessing. So slowly I would get chapters from Stephanie, like really at a slow pace, because obviously I was having chemo and recovering and everything. Having chemo, 6 treatments for 6 months. I had to have the chemotherapy. But I did feel like my dream was not... I remember thinking that my dream was dead. I remember the book, the manuscript, my dream of this book series. I remember even book 1 hasn't even been out yet, and it was looking really promising with the manuscript being with the editor, but yes, I felt like my dream was dead. And so me watching Authortube made me feel like I was living my dream through them, kind of. At the time, I was actually doing videos. One of these days I might even share some. I was practicing already to do Authortube during that time, and there was really no one there. There were a couple of people, and I watched Kim Chance, I watched Jenna Marassi. I also watched Love Something Create. I don't know if you've ever heard of #LoveWriteCreate, but I watched all of those videos. I just watched all of that. They were the Authortubers that I was watching. And just seeing the authors go through the journey made me feel like I was living through them, and I didn't know if my dream would be there. I felt like it was dead. My dream felt like it died inside of me. But I had a really strong best friend, Tanya, who prayed continuously with me, and we had to fight this belief. We fought it together through prayer that my dream was not dead. So I started saying my dream is asleep instead of that it's dead. And here we are in 2019, where the book might actually come out. So that would be, oh my gosh, 2019 might be the year where the book actually does come out. Yeah, so that's where I discovered Authortube, and it was just, I was continuously getting over the chemotherapy and always watching Authortube, and just feeling like that was my one little connection to my dream of being a writer and having my book finally come out. That was question number 1. That was the personal part there. Okay, let's see. So there's more. I skipped question number, so let's see. Question number 9. What was the first story you ever wrote? So the first story that I ever wrote was actually, I think I was like a teenager or in middle school, and I wrote a story, and my best friend Tanya, she always read a lot of books. I wasn't really a reader. I am a reader now, kind of. I'm getting to be a reader now. It's important, but she read a lot of books. She wrote something and I wrote something, and I compared my writing to her, and I saw all the lack that I had. I lacked I'm still choked up from talking about that, but I lacked, I could just see everything that I lacked. The descriptions, I wasn't that good at writing. I was comparing myself to her writing, to other people's writings. I just didn't have what it took to be a writer. That is what ingrained itself in my mind. I don't have what it takes to be a writer. So I already have a hard time with taking critiques, not personal. I already have insecurities of being a writer and knowing that I don't have that flow writing or lack of descriptions sometimes, just comparing myself way too much to other writers. So I already have that insecurity. Years ago, when I first got my feedback from a first draft that I submitted to a editor, it was it was really tough for me, even though if you look at it, it's just a normal kind of feedback. After about 2 years, I finally decided to commit myself to my dream, to not let it stop my dream, just to keep going, because I really believe that God called me to do this, and so that's what I did. I have a lot of ideas, I'm imaginative, and but I don't have what it takes to be a writer. This is really what I believed. And then, question number 8, when did you start writing? When I was 28 years old, or was I 29? I think I was 28 years old. In the year of 2002, I was coughing a lot, just really coughing a lot, and went to the doctors, got an x-ray, and found out that I had a huge tumor by my heart, which was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It was a lymph node the size of a child's head. And I had, in that year, chemotherapy and radiation. And radiation treatments. I found my way back to God because I had fallen away from God when I was 17. My father passed away, and I had fallen away from the Lord. And he died of cancer, and me getting cancer brought me back to the Lord when I was in the hospital. So I found the Lord again in my life, and I started seeing life differently, big time differently. It was actually a blessing because I started seeing life differently and how precious it really is. Realizing how precious it really is. I started seeing that. And so I had radiation treatments like around September, October, after the chemotherapy. This was the first time that I had cancer. The second time was just recently in 2015. So I remember so much. I can still remember that I was playing like these fantasy games with my nephews. And if I'm not mistaken, it was that holiday, that Christmas, that I was able to go for Christmas to Texas and visit my sister, which during that year didn't even seem like it would ever happen. And I was able to go, and we had a great Christmas, and I played these fantasy games. You know, I was like a bad guy named Qua with my two nephews, Jerry and Grayson. And I was always the bad guy Qua. But I always had like little maps for them, and I always played fantasy games. And so when I was my mother, when I headed back with her back to Germany, I had a laptop, and I was on the airplane, and I started writing a story for my nephews. It was just intended for my nephews. They were actually the main characters. I read a little bit of the story over the phone to him, and I said something like, the boy trembled at the sight of the monster, which, by the way, I think that's telling, not showing, writing techniques. That's why I need an editor. So I couldn't really write the story because I was exploring being a writer for them, but then that kind of felt like a roadblock for me because you're supposed, you're describing the character, and he said to me, I wouldn't be afraid of the monster. He was like, I think maybe 7 years old. I can't remember how old. He was really young. And he said, I wouldn't be afraid of the monster. And I was like, oh my gosh. Okay. And all of a sudden something awoke inside of me where I wanted to write just because I had a way of releasing my fantasy imagination and creativity. I had an outlet, a way to release it. And I really enjoyed it. So I started writing, not for them anymore, but kind of for myself. Then when I was going to a prayer house in Gelnhausen, I started praying that this book would glorify the Lord, that this would be a Christian fantasy, which it started off as a fantasy, and I had just found my way back to the Lord when I came out of the hospital. And so my heart changed, and I wanted it to be a Christian fantasy. I wanted my gift of fantasy and imagination to glorify Him, if that was possible. So that was my prayer, and that is the story of how the Sujemm began, and how, boy, it has taken several different turns, but meaning that where the world building, the world building probably has taken 15 years, honestly. The world building has taken a lot of time. Well, then when I finally committed to writing, so that's, yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay, that wasn't as bad as I thought. I'm relieved that I finally got that video out there. Editing it's not going to be fun, but yes. Question number 1 was, it's been on my mind, like, how am I going to talk about it? It wasn't so bad to share, so that's the journey. And thank you so much for all the likes, all the subscribes, all the great comments. Thank you so much for that. That means so much to me. Be blessed. Wiedersehen. Tschüss. Bye.